So let's start our discussion about the macro environment. I have a couple of quotes here. One set of quotes talks about not worrying about the environment. One is from the famous Civil War Admiral David Glasgow Farragut. His famous quote, of course, is, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." Of course, indicating that he wasn't concerned about the situation in the harbor in front of him. Another famous quote is from Jake Blues, from the famous Blues Brothers movie, where he's in the bar, in the country western bar, and he's given a set of songs that are requested, and he responds with, "Forget the requests, play the regular set." Of course, this results in a relatively disastrous situation. Probably a better way to look at the macro environment is with a couple of quotes that I really prefer. One is, "The long-run success of a firm is contingent on its ability to deal with changes in its business environment." Many companies along the way were highly successful, but for one reason or another did not change as the macro environment changed, did not understand how it was changing or how they needed to adapt to those changes, and are no longer those same successful organizations. Of course, a simpler version of that is simply adapt or die. So when we think about the environmental forces that affect the marketing function of an organization, we typically break these down into 5 categories: social factors, economic factors, technological factors, competitive factors, and regulatory factors. We'll spend some time talking about each of these over the next couple of lectures. Perhaps an easier way to remember these is with an acronym. Remember the acronym we had for goals? We had SMART goals. Well, the macro environment, often the acronym we use is called PEST, which implies that we need to be concerned about political, economic, social, and technological trends and factors. So in dealing with the macro environment, this is the 3-step process that I recommend. First, scan or monitor the environment. It's very important that organizations understand what is happening around them, how those macro environmental forces can and will influence their future business. But it's not simply enough to monitor that environment. You need to be able to forecast the changes to environment. You need to understand what's going to happen next and how things are going to be changing. It is really valuable if an organization can forecast changes to the macro environment so that they can be ready to respond as those changes take place. And then finally, it's important that the firm either adapt to the macro environmental changes as they see them happening, or they try to adapt the environment to the organization. The first one is relatively self-explanatory, but the second one is one that we see happening right now in our state government, where lobbyists, of course, go up to the state government as we prepare our newest budget and lobby for their programs and for things that they think are important for the success of their organizations, the people that they are lobbying for. In summary, this might be the most difficult of the possible factors to consider when looking at your marketing plan. And the reason, of course, is because the issues and trends in the macro environment are endless. Remember, there are 5 things that affect the marketing plan: the company itself, the industry, the customers, the competitors, and everything else which falls under the heading of the macro environment. It is crucial that we scan, forecast, and adapt to changes in the macro environment. The key to success is the process, and the process is identify trends and issues, understand the impact that those will have on our organization, and formulate a response. So let's go on to our next couple of lectures which will discuss each of these areas in more detail.